Billionaire hid his sick daughter for 14 years Part 2. What she became next left him in tears. From the moment he opened his eyes in the grand, sunlit room of his family's mansion, he was surrounded by wealth, comfort, and endless possibilities. His father, Robert Carter, was one of the richest men in the world, a successful entrepreneur whose business empire spanned continents. His mother, Isabella, was elegant, graceful, and always attentive to the details of their household. Everything in Ethan's world had been designed to ensure he never lacked anything: food, clothing, toys, tutors, or entertainment. As a young boy, Ethan grew up in a house that felt more like a palace than a home. There were servants in crisp uniforms walking silently through the marble corridors, ensuring that every corner sparkled. Gardens stretched for acres outside, with fountains that glistened in the sunlight, and the scent of roses filled the air. There were rooms upon rooms filled with books, toys, and gadgets, and a private cinema where Ethan could watch movies anytime he wanted. Most children would have been overwhelmed, but Ethan accepted this life as normal. To him, it was simply the way the world worked. Ethan's days were filled with tutors, piano lessons, tennis practices, and swimming sessions. While other children worried about homework or earning a little pocket money, Ethan's challenges were about which luxury car he would drive that week, or which exotic destination he would visit for vacation. At first glance, his life seemed perfect, but there was something missing. Ethan often felt an emptiness that he could not name. The people around him seemed distant, smiling politely but never truly connecting. His friends were mostly children of other wealthy families, and their conversations rarely went beyond trivial matters: new phones, the latest fashion, or expensive gadgets. Despite the superficial friendships, Ethan had a good heart, even if it was often hidden under layers of privilege and routine. He sometimes noticed the struggles of people outside his bubble: the vendors in the streets, the children who played barefoot, the workers who cleaned the streets or sold flowers. But these observations were fleeting. Life inside the mansion shielded him from reality. To Ethan, these glimpses of the real world were like distant clouds, visible, but not something he could touch or understand fully. Ethan's parents, though loving in their way, had high expectations. Robert wanted his son to follow in his footsteps, to one day take over the business empire that had been built with years of effort and sacrifice. Isabella, meanwhile, focused on shaping Ethan into a gentleman, ensuring he learned manners, etiquette, and the arts that were considered essential for someone of their status. Their love was genuine, but often expressed in a structured and formal way, more like guidance than emotional warmth. Ethan respected his parents deeply, but he sometimes wished for a friend, someone who would see him not as a wealthy heir, but as a boy with fears, hopes, and dreams. Ethan's daily life, though filled with luxury, was carefully scheduled. Mornings started with a lavish breakfast prepared by the mansion's chef. Fresh fruits, pastries, eggs, and exotic juices were laid out on a long, polished wooden table. The sunlight streaming through the massive windows made the golden cutlery and crystal glasses shine. After breakfast, he would attend his lessons, carefully guided by tutors who specialized in every subject imaginable. Mathematics, science, literature, languages, the tutors ensured he was academically advanced, often far beyond his peers. But it wasn't just academics that shaped Ethan. His father believed in teaching discipline and leadership, often taking Ethan to board meetings and business discussions. Though the meetings were complex and full of terms that Ethan struggled to understand, they were meant to expose him to the responsibilities that awaited him. Sometimes he would watch his father speak confidently, negotiating deals that involved millions of dollars, and he felt both admiration and pressure. It was clear that one day he would have to step into this demanding world. Despite the structured life, Ethan had moments of rebellion. There were times when he would sneak into the gardens late at night, barefoot, to escape the endless schedule. He loved the smell of wet grass, the cool breeze on his face, and the silence that stretched across the estate. In those quiet moments, he would think about life beyond wealth, about people who lived simply, yet with a sense of purpose and joy that he sometimes felt was missing in his own life. He often wondered what it would be like to experience life without servants, without endless luxury, and without the expectation to always perform and succeed. Ethan also had a natural curiosity about the world. Though his life was sheltered, He read books about different cultures, faraway places, and people who had overcome hardships. These stories fascinated him. He loved imagining himself in those worlds, facing challenges, learning lessons, and growing as a person. Yet when he looked around his mansion, the contrast between his life and the lives of others felt stark. The mansion's walls seemed like both a fortress and a cage, a place of comfort, but also a place that separated him from reality. Friendships, however, remained shallow. Most of Ethan's companions were children of wealthy families, whose lives mirrored his own. They laughed at the same jokes, competed in the same games, and shared the same toys. But Ethan often felt lonely. During parties with hundreds of guests, he would sometimes stand by the window, watching the stars, and wonder if he would ever meet someone who could understand him, not for his wealth, but for who he truly was. Despite his occasional loneliness, Ethan enjoyed life. He had a mischievous side and loved adventures, especially when they didn't risk his safety. He would race his sports cars around the private tracks in the estate, climb trees in the garden, or swim in the massive pool for hours. Each day brought a new experience, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more meaningful waiting for him beyond the gilded walls. Ethan's parents noticed his restlessness and tried to guide him. They introduced him to philanthropy, hoping that helping others would give him purpose. He would attend charity galas, visit orphanages, and participate in social events designed to cultivate empathy. At first, these activities felt like obligations, things to check off on his schedule. But slowly he began to see the impact he could have. When he handed toys to children or watched them laugh, he felt a small, warm spark of happiness. Though he didn't fully understand it yet, these moments hinted at a deeper part of himself that wanted connection, compassion, and meaning. Yet, for all the lessons, tutors, and experiences, Ethan remained somewhat disconnected from the real world. He lived in a bubble where luxury cushioned every failure, and privilege protected him from the harsh realities most people face daily. He knew he was different from other children, not just in wealth but in opportunity, and this sometimes left him feeling isolated. The mansion, the staff, the servants, all of it created a life that was beautiful but artificial in its perfection. And so, Ethan's early life continued in this rhythm of luxury and learning, of fleeting curiosity and occasional moments of reflection. He was a boy with limitless opportunities, a young man who could achieve anything, yet he remained unaware of how fragile and temporary his sheltered world truly was. The mansion, with its marble floors and golden chandeliers, felt like both a palace and a cage. Ethan loved it, but he also longed for something he couldn't name, a connection to people, a sense of reality, a glimpse of life beyond wealth. Little did Ethan know, life had plans for him that would change everything. A single event, unforeseen and sudden, would shatter his world, erase his memories, and force him to live in a reality he had never imagined. The carefree days of luxury and privilege, the endless routines and comforts, were all about to be replaced by lessons far more profound than any tutor could teach. But for now, Ethan's world was still bright, structured, and seemingly perfect, even as the first signs of an impending change quietly approached. Ethan's life had always been a carefully planned routine, one filled with comfort, tutors, and endless luxury. But life, as it often does, has a way of changing in a single instant. One rainy evening, the change came swiftly, unexpectedly, and completely. Ethan had decided to take his car for a drive along a winding road that cut through the hills near the mansion. The rain fell heavily, turning the asphalt into a slick, slippery path. Ethan, confident in his driving skills and the safety of his luxury car, underestimated the danger. The road curved sharply, and in a moment of distraction, a flash of lightning, a sudden movement in the corner of his eye, he lost control. The car skidded violently, tires spinning on the wet surface. Trees blurred past as Ethan struggled to regain control, but the vehicle collided with the guardrail and spun out of control, crashing into a small ditch. The sound of metal bending and glass shattering filled the night. Time seemed to slow for Ethan as darkness crept in and everything went silent. When he woke up, the first thing he noticed was the light, soft, warm, but unfamiliar. His head throbbed, pain pulsating with each heartbeat, and confusion clouded his mind. He tried to speak, but the words came slowly, slurred and strange even to him. He felt a profound disorientation, as if he had stepped into a world that was almost familiar but completely wrong. He couldn't remember where he was, how he had arrived, or even who he was. The room around him was large, with polished floors and heavy curtains, but it did not feel like his bedroom. Everything seemed strange yet luxurious. He noticed a uniform lying neatly folded on a chair and a small name tag with the word Eli pinned on it. Panic rose in his chest as he tried to recall who he was, only to find an empty space where his memories should have been. He could remember shapes, colors, and even emotions, but no names, no faces, no personal history. He felt like a blank page, staring at a life that was not his, or at least he could not recognize it. Soon, the staff entered the room. Their expressions were polite but firm, as if expecting him. They spoke to him with a tone that was professional, instructive, and slightly impatient. "Eli, breakfast is ready," one of them said. Ethan's mind struggled to process the words. "Breakfast?" he whispered, his voice shaky. The staff member nodded, gesturing toward the dining area. Hesitantly, Ethan got up, following directions without understanding why or how he could move so confidently in a place that felt foreign. As he walked through the hallways, Ethan noticed details he had never paid attention to before. The subtle differences in the way rooms were cleaned, the effort that went into preparing meals, and the quiet discipline of the staff. Every surface gleamed, every corner was organized perfectly, and every person moved with a purpose that demanded respect. Ethan felt a strange mix of awe and discomfort. There was something beautiful about the way everything was maintained, but also a humbling reminder that he did not belong here, or at least, that he was not who he thought he was. He entered the dining room, where a table was set with simple but neat utensils. The food was plain compared to the extravagant breakfasts he had once eaten, yet it smelled inviting. Hesitantly, he picked up a plate and began eating, trying to remember if he had done this before. The act of feeding himself, a task he had often ignored in his past life, now felt strange and grounding. He realized, perhaps for the first time, how much he had taken for granted in the life he could no longer remember. Days passed, and Ethan slowly began to adapt to his new reality. The mansion was enormous, and the tasks assigned to him were countless. He cleaned floors, polished furniture, washed dishes, and carried trays of food to various parts of the house. Each task, while simple, demanded patience and attention. Ethan was clumsy at first, breaking a few dishes and spilling water as he tried to navigate the corridors. The staff, though occasionally frustrated, guided him with a mix of discipline and kindness, correcting him gently when needed. It was exhausting work, far more demanding than Ethan had ever imagined. The mansion's luxury, once a symbol of comfort, now felt like a challenge. He discovered that every polished surface, every perfectly arranged piece of furniture, required constant effort. Servants worked long hours, often beginning before sunrise and ending late at night, their dedication unseen and unappreciated by those who had always lived in privilege. Watching them, Ethan felt a stirring of something unfamiliar: respect, awe, and perhaps even guilt. Ethan also learned the social dynamics of the household. The staff had their own relationships, their own stories, and their own rules. He began to notice how certain gestures, words, and even silence conveyed hierarchy and respect. He learned to listen, to observe, and to adapt. The experience was humbling. For the first time, Ethan understood the meaning of responsibility and the value of labor that had always been invisible to him. One day, while cleaning the library, he stumbled upon a stack of old books. Though he did not remember reading before, he felt an immediate attraction to them. He picked up a book about human resilience, the stories of people overcoming challenges and adversity. As he turned the pages, he felt a strange connection, as if the words were speaking directly to him. These stories ignited a curiosity and empathy that had been dormant in his earlier life of privilege. He realized that wealth and luxury had shielded him from understanding struggle, and now, through his new reality, he was beginning to see it clearly. The mansion itself became a teacher. Ethan began to notice small details. The way the cook carefully measured ingredients to ensure every meal was perfect, the gardener's dedication to maintaining the gardens despite the harsh weather, and the quiet strength of the housekeeper who seemed to manage everything. Effortlessly, he learned that wealth was not just about money or possessions, but about the work, effort, and commitment that went into creating a life of comfort. Each day brought new lessons, each task new insights, and each interaction new understanding. Ethan's nights were equally revealing. As he lay in his modest room, he reflected on his day, feeling exhaustion mingled with a strange satisfaction. He began to dream vividly, though the dreams were confusing. Sometimes he saw flashes of a different life, grand parties, lavish meals, and faces he could not name. Other times he dreamt of walking among people who smiled at him genuinely, sharing their struggles and joys openly. These dreams were disorienting but also comforting, hinting at memories locked somewhere deep within his mind. Despite the confusion, Ethan began to notice a change within himself. His patience grew, his empathy deepened, and his perspective on life shifted. He no longer saw the staff as mere servants, but as individuals with their own stories, dignity, and value. He began to help without being asked, to listen without interrupting, and to observe without judgment. Slowly, he earned their trust and respect not because of his wealth, but because of his willingness to learn, work hard, and genuinely care. As weeks passed, the mansion transformed in Ethan's eyes. It was no longer just a place of luxury, but a microcosm of life's complexity. He understood that comfort required effort, that privilege came with responsibility, and that every person had a role that deserved recognition. Through this journey, Ethan began to rediscover a sense of purpose he had never experienced in his previous life. He was learning lessons that no tutor, party, or wealth could ever teach. One afternoon, a sudden incident tested everything Ethan had learned. A small fire broke out in the kitchen due to a forgotten stove. Panic spread, but Ethan reacted instinctively. He grabbed a fire extinguisher, alerted the staff, and guided everyone to safety. In those moments, he felt a strange clarity and confidence, as if some hidden part of himself had awakened. His actions were brave, decisive, and compassionate. For the first time, he realized that even without memories of his past, he possessed qualities that defined who he truly was: courage, leadership, and empathy. After the fire was safely extinguished, the staff gathered around him, some smiling, others shaking their heads in disbelief at how efficiently he had acted. Ethan felt a surge of pride, but also humility. He had faced a real challenge, not for money or recognition, but to protect the lives of those around him. It was a turning point, a moment where he realized that identity was more than memory or wealth. It was also about action, character, and the choices one made in the face of adversity. Ethan's days continued in this new rhythm. He worked, learned, and grew, gradually becoming part of the household in a way he had never imagined. He laughed with the staff, shared small stories, and began to understand human relationships in a way that wealth had never allowed. The mansion, once a symbol of privilege and separation, had become a classroom, a teacher, and a mirror reflecting the best and worst of humanity. Though he still could not remember his past, Ethan started to feel whole in a way he never had. He understood that life's true richness came not from gold or possessions, but from experience, empathy, and connection. Every day, he discovered a little more about himself, a little more about others, and a little more about the meaning of life. And so, what began as confusion, fear, and disorientation slowly transformed into growth, understanding, and humility. Ethan had lost his memory, but in the process, he was finding something far more valuable: the ability to see life, people, and himself clearly. Little did he know, the journey was only beginning. The mansion, the staff, and the challenges that lay ahead would continue to shape him, revealing lessons that would ultimately change the course of his life forever. Ethan's life as Eli had settled into a rhythm, but it was no longer the simple routine of cleaning, cooking, and assisting the household staff. Each day brought new challenges and unexpected lessons that forced him to think, adapt, and grow. Though he still had no memory of his past, small, strange flashes of familiarity occasionally appeared in his mind, moments he could not explain, like a shadow of a forgotten dream. Sometimes he would walk through a room and feel a quiet tug in his chest, an emotion that seemed to belong to him but carried no name. One morning, as he was polishing the grand staircase, Ethan noticed a photograph tucked behind a decorative frame. It showed a man and a woman standing with a young boy, all smiling at the camera. The boy looked strangely familiar, and though he could not place why, a flicker of recognition passed through his mind. He held the photograph carefully, unsure why it felt important, and placed it on the shelf in a safe spot. The staff member who entered the room gave him a nod of approval, assuming he was just tidying things, but Ethan's heart raced. Something about the photo tugged at him in a way he could not explain. As days turned into weeks, Ethan began to notice patterns and routines within the mansion. The cook prepared meals with precise timing. The gardener maintained the vast grounds regardless of weather, and the housekeeper managed the staff with a careful balance of authority and kindness. Every person had a role, and each role was essential to the smooth running of the household. Ethan began to realize that a mansion's grandeur was not just the work of wealth, but the effort, skill, and dedication of many people working together. This understanding slowly shifted his perception of himself. In his previous life, he had taken for granted the invisible labor that made his comfort possible. Now, he felt a growing sense of humility and responsibility. Tasks that had once seemed mundane, washing dishes, sweeping floors, arranging furniture, became opportunities for learning and reflection. Every action, no matter how small, contributed to something larger, and Ethan felt a new sense of purpose in performing them well. But life in the mansion was not without challenges. One afternoon, a delivery arrived that needed to be handled with care. Ethan was tasked with unpacking and organizing a collection of fragile items in the library, a mix of delicate antiques and rare books. His hands shook slightly as he worked, aware of the responsibility, yet determined to do it right. He carefully examined each piece, dusting it, arranging it, and placing it exactly where it belonged. When he finished, the housekeeper inspected his work and gave a rare, warm smile. "Well done, Eli," she said. For the first time, Ethan felt the genuine satisfaction of accomplishment, not because of praise or reward, but because he had done something meaningful and correct. Ethan also began to form bonds with the staff. They were cautious at first, unsure how to treat the new servant who seemed eager yet inexperienced. Over time, however, they recognized his effort, humility, and sincerity. He listened to their stories, helped them without complaint, and showed interest in their lives beyond the mansion's walls. He learned about the struggles of the cook, who worked tirelessly to support her family, the gardener, who had dreams of opening his own nursery, and the housekeeper, who balanced her job with caring for elderly relatives. Each story added depth to Ethan's understanding of life, hard work, and human resilience. Despite these new experiences, Ethan could not shake the occasional flashes of memory. One evening, while walking through the study, he noticed a collection of letters stacked neatly in a drawer. Opening one, he felt a strange familiarity with the handwriting. The words themselves were unclear, but the emotions conveyed, a mixture of care, pride, and guidance, resonated deeply with him. He folded the letter carefully and returned it to the drawer, feeling both comforted and unsettled. It was as if a part of him was awakening, reminding him that his life was more than what he currently remembered. One particularly challenging day, the mansion faced a crisis. A severe storm had caused a tree to fall, blocking the main entrance and damaging part of the garden. Water seeped into the lower hallways, threatening furniture and valuable possessions. Panic spread among the staff as they scrambled to protect the mansion. Ethan, drawing on the confidence he had gained from past experiences, took charge calmly. He directed the staff to move items to safety, helped carry furniture, and worked tirelessly alongside them. For hours, he labored without rest, driven by a determination to protect the home he did not yet fully remember as his own. After the storm passed, the staff gathered, exhausted but grateful. They looked at Ethan with respect, recognizing not just his hard work but his leadership and initiative. For the first time, he felt the true weight of responsibility and the satisfaction that came from protecting and helping others. It was a pivotal moment, showing him that value and identity were not merely tied to memory or status, but to actions, choices, and character. Ethan's understanding of the mansion and its people continued to deepen. He began to notice small, personal touches that reflected care and love, flowers arranged in a vase just so, a small treat left on the cook's desk, a note of encouragement from the housekeeper to the gardener. These acts of kindness, often unnoticed by the wealthy inhabitants in his previous life, now captured his full attention. He realized that true wealth was not measured in money or possessions, but in the thoughtfulness, effort, and empathy that people showed to one another. During this time, Ethan also began exploring the mansion more thoroughly. Rooms that had once seemed ordinary now revealed hidden stories, old photographs, family heirlooms, journals, and letters tucked away in drawers. Each item sparked a faint, unexplainable sense of recognition. He could not recall the details, but the emotions they evoked were powerful: nostalgia, warmth, and a subtle longing. Sometimes these feelings brought a quiet ache, a sense that he was missing something crucial yet just out of reach. One day, while cleaning the attic, Ethan stumbled upon a collection of his father's awards and recognitions. Certificates, plaques, and framed letters celebrated achievements he could not remember being part of. He traced his fingers over the polished surfaces, feeling awe and confusion. The realization struck him. Even if he could not recall his past, it had been filled with accomplishments, responsibilities, and relationships. The person he had been was still present in some way, waiting to be remembered, waiting for him to reconnect. Despite these glimpses of the past, Ethan remained grounded in his present reality. He continued performing his duties, helping the staff, and learning the intricacies of life within the mansion. He discovered the value of patience, the importance of empathy, and the strength found in perseverance. Each day added a new layer to his understanding of people, work, and life itself. The mansion was no longer just a place of luxury. It was a living lesson, a mirror reflecting both human effort and human resilience. Ethan also began to notice how his own perspective had shifted. In the past, he had seen the mansion, the staff, and the routines as trivial or unimportant. Now he understood that every role, no matter how small, was vital to the harmony of the household. He began to appreciate the complexity of the world around him, recognizing that life was composed of countless unseen efforts, each contributing to the comfort and well-being of others. This realization deepened his respect for people and instilled in him a sense of humility he had never known. As the months passed, Ethan became more than just a servant. He became a trusted part of the household, someone the staff relied on and confided in. He listened carefully, offered support when needed, and acted decisively in moments of challenge. His confidence grew, not from wealth or status, but from understanding, experience, and genuine care. He began to feel a sense of belonging that had eluded him in his previous life. For the first time, he experienced connections built on respect, trust, and mutual effort rather than superficial status. Yet, amid this growth and adaptation, the flickers of memory persisted. Sometimes, a particular room, object, or phrase would spark a sudden, vivid emotion. A piano in the corner reminded him of music he could no longer recall playing. A set of paintings brought a strange sense of familiarity, and certain family rituals felt comforting yet unplaceable. These glimpses hinted at a life that had been rich, full, and intertwined with the mansion he now served. They created an undercurrent of curiosity, a quiet yearning to uncover the truth of his past. One afternoon, while assisting the gardener, Ethan found an old key buried in the soil. Its weight in his hand felt significant, as if it held a secret meant for him alone. He carried it to the housekeeper, who looked at him curiously but said nothing. Later, when he tried the key in a locked cabinet in the study, he discovered a collection of letters, photographs, and personal items belonging to a boy he did not recognize yet somehow felt connected to. The emotions were overwhelming: confusion, wonder, and a subtle joy that perhaps, slowly, pieces of his identity were beginning to return. Through these experiences, Ethan learned one of the most important lessons of all. Identity is not solely defined by memory or wealth. It is shaped by action, empathy, and understanding. Even without his past, he had grown into someone capable of leadership, compassion, and connection. The mansion, the staff, and the daily challenges had transformed him, teaching lessons that no luxury or privilege could have ever provided. By the end of Part 3, Ethan was no longer the confused, lost boy who had arrived in the mansion with no memory. He had grown into a thoughtful, responsible, and compassionate young man, aware of the value of hard work, the dignity of others, and the importance of human connection. Yet, he remained curious about his past. The flashes of memory, the items he discovered, and the emotions they stirred hinted at a life waiting to be remembered. The next stage of his journey promised revelation, challenges, and ultimately, transformation that would bridge the gap between the man he had been and the man he was becoming. Time passed in the mansion, and Ethan had grown into his role as Eli in ways he could never have imagined. He was no longer just a clumsy, confused young man trying to navigate chores and responsibilities. He had become a trusted figure among the staff, someone whose presence was valued, whose opinion mattered, and whose work made a real difference in the daily life of the household. Yet despite his growth, the flashes of memory that occasionally struck him were growing stronger and more frequent. They were no longer vague shadows, but sharper, more persistent glimpses of something he once knew deeply. One morning, as he carried a tray of breakfast to the study, Ethan noticed a book lying open on the desk. It was a photo album, one he had seen before but could not place. As he turned the pages, images of a grand party, friends laughing, and a boy smiling at the camera stirred a rush of emotions. The boy in the pictures looked exactly like him, though the name eluded him. A sudden wave of recognition washed over him, stronger than any flash he had felt before. His heart pounded as he tried to piece together the fragments of his identity. He could feel a connection, like a thread pulling him toward a truth he had long forgotten. That day, Ethan found himself wandering the mansion with renewed curiosity. He touched the walls, examined the furniture, and lingered over personal items with a sense of urgency. Every corner seemed to whisper a story he could almost remember. A toy left in the garden, a piano in the corner of the music room, a chair perfectly placed by the window. All of it felt intimately familiar, though he could not yet recall why. Each discovery brought a mix of excitement, confusion, and an aching sense of longing. The staff began to notice subtle changes in him. He moved with a new confidence, spoke with greater assurance, and seemed more reflective than ever before. The housekeeper, who had guided him patiently through countless lessons, smiled knowingly, sensing that Ethan was on the verge of a profound realization. The cook, gardener, and other staff members continued to treat him with respect, noticing that he approached every task not just with diligence, but with a deep, emerging understanding of life and responsibility. One afternoon, a family celebration provided the turning point. The household was preparing for a formal gathering, and Ethan was tasked with organizing decorations and ensuring the smooth running of the event. As he carried trays of refreshments and arranged flowers, he noticed familiar faces entering the mansion, friends, colleagues, and family members who greeted him warmly, yet with an air of curiosity about the new servant who seemed unusually capable. In a fleeting moment, he caught sight of a man standing near the doorway, tall, confident, and unmistakably familiar. His chest tightened as a memory burst through the fog: his father. The recognition was immediate and overwhelming. Ethan froze, the tray slipping slightly from his hands. The man approached him slowly, concern and surprise etched across his face. "Ethan?" he asked, his voice calm but tinged with disbelief. Ethan's heart raced. The name struck him like a key unlocking a door. He felt a rush of emotions, fear, confusion, joy, and relief all at once. I think that's me," he whispered, voice trembling. The father's eyes filled with tears as he realized that the young man before him was indeed his long-lost son, returning to the life he had once known, but with a soul transformed by experiences beyond wealth and privilege. In the days that followed, Ethan's memory returned more fully, piecing together the events of his past, his childhood, the accident, the life of luxury he had once lived. Yet he saw it all through new eyes. He remembered the arrogance he had carried, the carelessness with which he had taken the world for granted, and the superficiality of the relationships he had once valued. He felt gratitude, not just for the wealth and comfort he had enjoyed, but for the lessons learned while living as someone else, as someone who had no status yet discovered the true meaning of life. Ethan's return to his past life was not immediate. He had to reconcile two realities: the privileged boy he once was and the empathetic, humble young man he had become. The mansion, once a symbol of separation and comfort, now felt like a bridge connecting these two versions of himself. He began interacting with his family not as the son who had always been pampered, but as someone who understood effort, hardship, and genuine connection. Conversations with his parents became deeper, filled with respect and openness. He listened to their concerns, shared his experiences, and began building relationships based on understanding rather than expectation. One afternoon, Ethan visited the staff in the kitchen, the gardens, and the various rooms of the mansion. He thanked them for their patience, guidance, and friendship, expressing sincere gratitude for the lessons they had taught him. The staff, initially surprised, were deeply moved by his humility and honesty. They had known him as a servant, yet here he was, acknowledging the value of their work, recognizing their efforts, and offering genuine appreciation. It was a moment of reconciliation, not just for Ethan, but for everyone in the household who had helped shape him during his journey. Ethan also reflected on the broader meaning of his experience. He realized that wealth, status, and comfort were fleeting and could not define the essence of a person. What mattered were values, kindness, empathy, resilience, and integrity. He had discovered that human connection, respect, and understanding were the true measures of a fulfilling life. These insights would guide him in the years to come, shaping the decisions he would make, the relationships he would nurture, and the legacy he would leave behind. With memory fully restored, Ethan began taking steps to integrate the lessons of his experience into his life. He initiated programs to improve working conditions for the staff, ensuring they felt valued and respected. He invested in education and opportunities for people beyond the mansion, creating a ripple effect of positive change that extended far beyond his immediate surroundings. Each decision was informed by the empathy and understanding he had cultivated while living as Eli, a life that had seemed like a challenge, but had ultimately become the most profound gift he had ever received. Yet, even as he embraced his wealth and responsibilities, Ethan maintained the humility that had been instilled in him during his time as a servant. He approached life with a balance of confidence and modesty, understanding that true leadership required listening, learning, and serving others. The mansion, the staff, and the experiences of his lost months had reshaped him in ways that wealth alone never could. He was no longer defined by privilege but by character, compassion, and action. One evening, as he stood by the large window of the mansion, gazing at the sunset, Ethan reflected on his journey. He remembered the fear and confusion of waking up without memory, the exhaustion and humility of performing tasks he had never imagined, and the quiet joy of forming genuine connections with people who had no reason to care for him. He understood that losing his memory had been a blessing in disguise, forcing him to confront the world as it truly was, to appreciate the efforts of others, and to discover the strength and empathy within himself. Ethan's transformation did not go unnoticed. His family and friends observed the change in his demeanor, the depth in his conversations, and the sincerity in his actions. He became a source of inspiration, not because of wealth or status, but because of the lessons he embodied and the compassion he showed. He had learned that true greatness was measured not by possessions, but by the impact one had on the lives of others. In the months that followed, Ethan continued to honor the lessons of his past months. He organized events to recognize and celebrate the staff, encouraged education and skill development, and supported charitable initiatives to help those in need. Every decision he made was informed by empathy, understanding, and a desire to create positive change. He had become not just a son, an heir, or a wealthy individual, but a young man who understood the value of human life, effort, and connection. As the story of Ethan's transformation spread quietly through the mansion and beyond, it became clear that his journey was more than a personal awakening. It was a testament to the power of experience, humility, and empathy. The boy who had once taken everything for granted had emerged as someone who truly understood the meaning of life, the value of work, and the importance of relationships. His life had come full circle, not just through memory, but through the lessons that had shaped his heart and mind. Finally, Ethan stood at the center of the mansion one quiet evening, reflecting on the path he had traveled. He had lost his memory, and in doing so had discovered a deeper truth about himself and the world around him. The mansion, once a symbol of privilege and separation, had become a place of learning, growth, and transformation. He had awakened to a life of humility, compassion, and purpose. He had discovered that true wealth lay not in gold, possessions, or status, but in understanding, connection, and the choices one made to make the world better for others. Ethan knew that the future held challenges, responsibilities, and opportunities, but he faced them with a heart tempered by experience and a mind enlightened by empathy. He had learned to value people over possessions, effort over ease, and love over luxury. In losing himself, he had truly found who he was meant to be. And with that understanding, he stepped forward into a life that promised not only wealth and privilege, but meaning, fulfillment, and the ability to touch the lives of others in ways he had never imagined possible.